We love playing sports as kids, and kids should have fun playing sports, right? Well, what is up with today's youth sports culture, and how do we, as followers of Jesus, respond differently in the midst of what's going on within the culture? Well, today I'm joined by Ed Uszynski and Brian Smith, and they're going to tell us all about their new book, Away Game. It's next. Welcome to the Unpacking It podcast, where we unpack sports, faith, and life with intriguing guests from the sports and entertainment world. I'm fired up to be joined by two of my friends today, Ed Uszynski and Brian Smith, authors of the book Away Game, a Christian's Parent's Guide to Navigating Youth Sports. They're here to help you as parents and me transform the complexity of youth sports into a platform for discipleship. And this is going to be a fascinating conversation. I have already gone deep into this book, and I am personally inspired by it and highly recommend it, and can't wait to get into a number of different topics with both these guys today, because let's face it, sports are awesome. But oftentimes youth sports has some things going on. It's like, wait, this doesn't seem right. But how do we engage? How do we view things differently? And what are the practical tips and strategies that we can implement? So we're going to get into all of that today. Before we jump in, let me mention two things. One, it's that time of year. Fantasy football leagues are starting everywhere. I hope that your league is going to incorporate fantasy football fellowship this season. Here at Unpacking It, we provide all the content, resources, framework, and we call it Fantasy Football Fellowship. All the details can be found at fantasyfootballfellowship.com. Sign up to become a member for free today, and we hope that your league will meet together all season long during league meetings. Also, want to thank our sponsor, Upward Sports. I'm repping the shirt today. Upward Sports is the world's largest Christian youth sports organization, partnering with local churches to use sports as a powerful outreach tool to engage the community. Upward offers a variety of league options, including basketball, cheerleading, soccer, flag football, volleyball, baseball, running for adults, and pickleball. So partnering with Upward Sports helps your church reach the community, attract young families, and share the gospel in a meaningful way. And so whether you're expanding an existing sports ministry or starting from scratch, explore Upward Sports. And they've partnered with over 5,000 churches over the years, and they are ready to help you out. So check out upward.org/unpack. All right, let's say hello to Brian Smith and Ed Uszynski. First, Brian Smith is the author of several books, including The Christian Athlete, Glorifying God in Sports. He's been on staff with Athletes in Action since 2008. He's a graduate of Wake Forest University, and he's also got his master's degree in Theology and Sports Studies through Baylor University, and he lives in Michigan with his wife and 3 kids. And you guys know Ed Uszynski well. He's a regular guest co-host here at Unpacking It, and he's an author, speaker, and sports minister with over 3 decades experience discipling college and professional athletes. And he's got a number of theological degrees from Trinity Evangelical Divinity School and a PhD in American Culture Studies. He lives in Ohio with his wife, Amy, and 4 children. Let's say hello to Ed and Brian. Brian, Ed, how you guys doing?
Thanks for having us, Bryce. Good to be here.
Good, man. That's a mouthful getting all that out for both of us.
You got the degrees, you got the experience, and you guys live and breathe the sports ministry world. And so God uniquely equipped both of you to put this book together. And so many different things I want to talk about. I absolutely love the book. And really what jumped out to me was how relatable, practical, honest you guys were. And I listened to the audio version where you actually added some color to the topics as well. But you guys, talked about the ways that you've even failed as a parent or coach, or the challenges that you've faced. And so you're not coming at this with all, having all the answers, but you're coming at this with a humble approach to say, hey, youth sports can be different. Our role as parents within youth sports can be different. And so I loved it and thrilled about it. But would love to just kind of hear initially the heartbeat behind this and how the book came together.
Yeah, well, we wrote it for ourselves as much as anybody. I mean, even in the way you just introed that, Bryce, Brian and I, it was probably about 8 years ago, as you said, we both have been working with college athletes for decades, but now we're parents and we're coaches. So we become youth sport coaches, and we're trying to figure out how to navigate other kids' parents. We're trying to figure out how to navigate our own kids, and we're trying to figure out how to navigate ourselves. And so really we spent a lot of time years ago just talking about what do we do, and realized there really wasn't hardly anything written at all for Christians in terms of how to engage youth sports. There just isn't. It's like it's this brand new field that, as is often the case as Christians, we're a little bit behind the curve in terms of thinking about as a Christian. So we need to do something with this, and it just took us a few years to finally turn it into a book.
Yeah, it was countless conversations with friends in this stage of life. And I was a part of these conversations where we're just complaining about the state of youth sports today. And it got to the point where it was almost like there's got to be answers out there for how do we live Christianly in this space? Like, how do we live counterculturally in a way where we can come to the table in these conversations and talk about things that are going well and how we are living differently. But to do that, Ed and I just thought, hey, if we could come up with some sort of manual, not as like the be all end all, but at least a conversation starter to hopefully see a movement of Christians who begin to do this differently. That was our goal from the start, and we're just kind of see what happens from here.
Definitely. And what's interesting is you said, these conversations about complaining about youth sports. That's not what this book is, though. This book, it kind of comes from that. There's a frustration in what's going on in youth sports, but it's not to just complain and whine about it. It's like, no. How do we actually help be different and change, the ways that we can change within the culture? And so it's very, biblically based, and it's very encouraging. It's a very uplifting book that, hey, we actually can be different in this sports world and in this youth sports world specifically. And so I appreciated that. And so kind of your approach to the tone of the book and kind of what went into that kind of process, I guess.
Yeah, it's easy to complain about it, right? Like everybody knows there's something wrong with it, and everybody seems to be complaining about it. But what other group of people should be optimistic and creative, and maybe even hopeful would be a good word, about playing a part of redeeming a good gift from God that's gone wrong in society? Like, if anyone, that should be Christians who take up this tone of, hey, we can make a difference in this space. And so I don't know if we were intentional, Ed, about that tone when we were writing it, but we for sure didn't want to just be another complaining voice joining with the rest of the crowd. We all know something's wrong. Let's do something different.
Yeah, and we love the idea of following in the footsteps of Daniel in the Bible and his friends who are living in an intensely secular culture in Babylon. And they don't isolate themselves and just separate. So that's an option, is that you just kind of opt out of sport culture. And that's not where Brian and I were. You also can easily just wind up going along with it and just get on the fast moving train and just, ride it to the end of the tracks and don't think about it at all until it's all over. And again, we said, well, that doesn't seem like a healthy approach either. How do we do what they did, which is to be obediently involved right there in the midst of the chaos, trusting God to do something to say, at least on our watch, in our space, it's going to look different. It's not going to look perfect. We may be stumbling and bumbling around a bit, but we're heading in a different direction in terms of how we're going to operate with our kids. And when we're coaches, the way we're going to operate with everyone's kids, just to take a different approach in the midst of it.
I love it. All right, so let's really dive into this, and I want to start where you guys really started as well, but the history of youth sports and what you shared in your research was really eye-opening and fascinating to me, and I didn't recognize all the layers of sort of the history of youth sports, but give us kind of a quick overview. And again, encourage people to kind of read it during, in the book, but help us understand what is youth sports and where did it come from?
Yeah, and we're really on the back end of a 50-year process in which youth sports has become literally a $40 billion industry. That's a new reality. Those kinds of numbers is like within the last decade, 15 years, that it's just kind of exploded as an industry. And it's not, we say this, there's nothing wrong with making money on youth sports, but inevitably what happens is that the parents start to become and the adults start to become more central to the narrative, and the kids actually start getting left more out. Even though, again, there's sort of an irony to that. Like, it should be about the kids, but the kids' best interests wind up going way down the list when huge money is involved and when parents start driving the equation. And that's just really what's happened. It's gone from being kid-centered to parent-centered. It's gone from being affordable to being super expensive. It's gone from being local, where you just kind of play within the community, to having to cross state lines all the time. It's gone from being seasonal to being year-round, where you have to specialize earlier, which is really different. It's gone from being really about play to being primarily about winning. And again, we're not against winning, and maybe we'll talk more about that. We're not against that, but it's like, if that's all that matters, then play starts to get left out, even for 6-year-olds, which is just kind of crazy. So there's just been this shift that's taken place that most of us, like you said, Bryce, didn't even realize was happening. But here we are, and it has consequences for us and the kids.
And Brian, part of the history of youth sports, and you alluded to it, Ed, as far as, it started off as play and fun, and there actually was a Christian foundation to the start of youth sports. Isn't that right, Brian?
Yeah, you're talking about the YMCA.
That's right.
Yeah. And so we talk about this in the book, that was the original goal of the YMCA, was to bring in kind of this total athlete mentality, where we're investing into the physical, the mental, and the spiritual side of athletes. But over the years, it has, you kind of like strip away one at a time, and money gets involved in the process. And so, Bryce, what we're trying to paint a picture of in the book here is that as parents, like we really do believe most parents are well-intentioned in the space. But what's happening as we get towards this end of, hopefully this 50-year cycle, is that we're viewing youth sports as this almost like ticket for our kids to get a starting spot, or get a college scholarship, or get something, whatever it is. And we're investing all of this time, energy, and money into youth sports, hoping that it's going to get us or our kids somewhere. And what we're trying to do in the book is say, hey, let's slow down. Let's realize what we call the youth sport industrial complex is doing to us, in us, and through us, the lies that they're selling us. And let's change this idea of the ticket that we're buying. Instead of a ticket to this imagined future for our kid, what if we view the ticket that we're buying is we actually get a front row seat every single time we watch our kids play, to see them go through every single emotion possible, the highest of highs and the lowest of lows, and everywhere in between. And what this is actually doing is it's giving us incredible information to see our kids go through all of this. And then we as parents get the opportunity to disciple through the process. And so we can hopefully take back some of what was originally started in the YMCA, but now we get to play a central role in that process.
That's good.
And you use the word opportunity. And to me, that was kind of the overall takeaway for me, is that youth sports is an opportunity for us as parents to walk the journey, just like you were talking about, the character journey and the discipleship journey with our kids. And it's just an avenue for that. And so every time our kids are playing, we've got an opportunity. And are we taking advantage of that opportunity? Or to what you mentioned earlier, Ed, are we just getting sucked into the sports culture and just acting like everybody else, and kind of how the youth sports culture wants you to act? And so, Ed, I'd love for you to kind of talk about actually the term that Brian used, this was actually the first time I had heard it, but the youth sports industrial complex, which you guys refer to, throughout the entire book and sort of a key element to our understanding of this. So what does that mean exactly, Ed?
Well, what we're saying is that it really has become a machine. It's a sport industry,
Yeah.
and it's got its own value system. It's got its own rules of engagement. It's got its own expectations. It's got its own imagined future for both you and your kids. And it's discipling us, whether we realize it or not. And again, most of us don't realize this, and it's kind of hard to even acknowledge it, but we're being formed. I think we could even say we're being malformed by the current youth sport complex, youth industrial complex. We're being malformed from a Christian perspective. And so we first just need to realize that we need to recognize that's happening. And like we already said, we're not saying then that we need to shun it or that we have to step completely away from it, but right in the midst of it, we need to recognize what it's teaching us and compare that to what does the Bible want for us in terms of a value system. I mean, again, it sounds almost cliche, but how do we bring the Bible to bear, the gospel to bear on the youth sport experience?
Yeah.
It matters a ton whether or not our kid is still walking with Jesus when they're 25. It doesn't matter so much whether or not they were able to hit the outside corner, as a pitcher at 25. It just doesn't.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter whether they were able to, continue to get personal best when they're running at age 25, but it really does matter whether or not they have character when they show up at work every day.
Hmm.
So again, it's just sort of like taking some spiritual smelling salts and saying, okay, if that's the case, then how should we then be interacting with our kids today and be more concerned about their virtue being formed in the midst of it and not just their stats or just their skills, which again, we're not against that, but it's almost become too much of a priority for us as adults. And the virtue thing is just getting left out.
Hmm. Continue that thought, Brian, and sort of the way you framed it as far as spiritual formation versus sport formation, and how can we understand the difference?
Yeah, Romans 12 is going to tell us not to conform any longer to the pattern of this world, but to be transformed by the renewing of your mind. And so to do that, what we're arguing is you have to understand how culture, sport culture specifically, is forming you. And you can go throughout the rest of culture and talk about all different ways culture is forming us. But specifically sport culture, how is it forming us? If we're trying to swim upstream against it, we need to know what we're swimming upstream against. And so we need to know, like Ed said, it's discipling us, it's forming us, it's malforming us. We need to know as Christians, what are the tactics? What are the subliminal messages they're sending us? This idea even that the biggest win is that your kid would perform. Like what does it mean then if we're taking on that as an identity, this idea that performance is all that matters? That almost seems contrary to the gospel. So for us to become almost experts in how is sport culture forming us, and then we can open up our Bibles and say, how does God want us to be formed through his spirit in the world today? What would it look like for us, not just in business, but in work, in podcasting, but in youth sports? What would it look like for us to swim against the stream? That's what we're doing. We're saying this is what sport culture is teaching us. This is what the Bible's teaching us. And here's how you live faithfully in that system and pursue spiritual formation.
Well, Bryce, should we just throw some things out? So on page 53, if people are listening and actually have the book, it's sport culture is teaching us that winning is all that matters. It really is. That's ESPN has actually mastered the art of making championships be the only measuring stick for a professional athlete. Haven't they?
Yeah.
I mean, they're only talking about how many did you get? That performance creates identity. I mean, that's always been in place, but it's just hyper there now. Performance creates your identity, a me first attitude, using anger and fear as constant motivations and really not having any other access to another form of motivation. Anger and fear are the primary, fuels for motivation. Treating people like a means to an end. The car ride home becomes a space to fix and correct, and we can just go on and on. We don't even think about these things, but they're malforming us. Dallas Willard, the old Christian philosopher, talked about how we need to recognize the ways that we're being malformed so that we can intentionally move against that, just like Brian said, and be reformed, be transformed by the renewing of our mind. Right there in the midst of this culture that's trying to turn us into something other than a Jesus follower.
So good. And again, I think what I appreciated about this book and your approach to it is not that we can't change culture, but that's a big undertaking to just try to change culture. But we can be different within the culture, and we can stand out, and we can be a light. And actually, last week's podcast was about just living holy lives that are set apart and are different.
Mm-hmm.
And so we as parents and coaches and involved in youth sports, and then helping train our kids to stand out and be different too. All of that is possible because we trust in Jesus and follow the Holy Spirit. And so that's the exciting part. That's the opportunity, because it is overwhelming. You start listing all those things about this is what the culture tells us, starting from ESPN, the sports culture that, you guys are sports fans like I am, but that trickles down all the way to youth sports.
Yeah.
And so we have to, evaluate and address and acknowledge, I'm off here. So anyway, that's my whole take on it.
Well, and it's hard. The thing that hurts, and again, I'm saying this from personal experience, I think Brian will testify to it too, is just the way the youth sport experience for our kids exposes my own insecurities. It exposes my own fears of an imagined future for him or her. It exposes my idolatry and the way that I'm like putting something above God through my kid. It exposes my lack of love for people, that I really want to be the center of this, and again, just kind of on. And it's really hard to have to face that stuff. But if I'm going to be a good discipler in my kid's life, I'm going to have to acknowledge some of that stuff and let it be sanctified, let it be changed. Even as we're trying to minister to our kids and we're trying to be good parents, we need to be changed first.
And that's the beauty of sport too, right? It almost acts as this mirror where we get to see the true version of ourselves, like who I am yesterday when I'm playing in a old man 3-on-3 basketball tournament and I'm mouthing off and being a little sad. Like, that's who I am. This isn't just like who I become when I play sports. It's like the truest reflection of me when I do play sports, and it can be really ugly at times, but it's also this gift of like, wow, that's who I am. There's some things that need to change now in light of what I just saw and heard and experienced.
Yeah, I'm just getting into coaching. So I'm coaching my 6-year-old daughter's soccer, and I'm already, recognizing, I'm taking this too seriously, or wait, do I have the right approach? And even yesterday I was complaining to my neighbor that we don't have enough good players on our 6-year-old soccer team. And it's just like, wait, what am I talking about?
That's what happens. Yes.
Now all of a sudden I'm mad that the other did the other coaches somehow know who the good players are and they got them on their team, and now I'm mad about it. And so it's all there. And one of the funny yet true things that you guys brought out in this book, and I wasn't necessarily a huge Napoleon Dynamite fan. That's not necessarily my sense of humor, but the parallel to Uncle Rico and him reminiscing about what could have been with his football career, you guys used that as a parallel in this book. Why don't you share about that? Because I thought that was really good.
If Coach would have just put me in senior year, we'd have won state. Not a doubt in my mind. Not a doubt in my mind. And then he goes off and talking to his nephew Kip about how the possibility of having a time machine because he wants to go back and play again. We use that because it's kind of a weird reflection of how a lot of us as parents think today of like, man, if only I had this opportunity. I can't get that back. I know time machines don't exist, but my kid has become my time machine in a sense. Yep. So I can't go and redo the past, but I can, and we wouldn't use this language out loud, but I can live vicariously through my son who I'm watching do it right now. And really everything he does reflects well or poorly on me. And so we have a lot invested in our kids, because when my son scores a touchdown, it makes me look really, really good. When he drops the ball, I'm like in a shameful way, like feeling like people are looking at me like it was my fault. And so it has this weird like it is my image bearer out there playing, and I can choose to live vicariously through him, or I can have a healthy separation between who he is and who I should have been as an athlete.
It's good. Yeah.
What's interesting, Bryce, is if you look at like the old YouTube clips of that scene, it has 40 to 50-year-old dudes who are commenting on the side of saying something like, I laughed hysterically at this when it came out, but now I totally resonate with Uncle Rico, and I almost feel sorry for him. And I felt that way rewatching it. As like, it was hilarious, but I get it. I get where he was at.
Totally. Well, and you don't realize that the amount of regret. Again, we could just turn this into a little men's retreat right now. But we all have to work through regret when it comes to our sports life. We do. No matter how high up the ladder you went, even you wind up with lots of regret. Sometimes what's getting exposed is anger, lots of unresolved anger that's inside of us that just has a really convenient way of coming out on the sideline at those 6-year-old games when you hear something coming from, the other team's fans, and it just, tweaks you, and you find yourself screaming stuff across the 50-yard line while there's these little girls running around and looking at flowers on the field, and we're all screaming at each other on the sideline. We're saying, hey, somebody has to call a timeout and just say, what's going on here? What am I doing? Why am I so bothered by this? This is a great thing to actually be able to talk about with our spouses, even like what's happening inside of us as we're watching this. And how do we bring this to the altar? How do we put it in front of Jesus and say, wait, this needs to change? And like this kid that you've given me is bringing things out into the light that need to change. It's almost comical that sports is what's doing it, but help me change, God, so that I can help my kid change.
And that's really the message of this book is both of those aspects, that it's not just youth sports. It's not just playing sports. It's actually God using youth sports to change us, transform us, and us helping transform our kids through the whole activity of sports. Wow. And it's not just on the field. It's not just off the, in practice. It's in the car. It's at home after the game. Some of the stories that you guys shared of, the conversations you've had with your kids over the years, very impactful. And especially Brian, one about swimming, I resonated with, and different stories you guys brought up, very relatable. But all of these opportunities, again, are ways for us to grow and be transformed. And so, anyway, just to echo and appreciate what you guys have done. And so, one of the other topics that I found fascinating in the book, and it took me a while to sort of accept it, because I was mowing the lawn, listening to the audiobook, going, wait. They're saying that sports don't necessarily build character. And so this myth that, because this is what we sort of expect or accept, sports build character, but we leave it at that. Why did you guys push back against that phrase?
Good question.
Yeah, we didn't push back against it because it was our opinion. This is all the research that has been done has said that sports don't build character, in large part because there's too many variables. You can't measure a coach, a referee, what it's going to be like in the stands. Like, there's just too many variables to say definitively that sports build character. We've just on these podcasts explained it like this. If your kids today go through if you just watch a handshake line after the game, you would be able to assume like, oh, they're going through the handshake line, so surely they're learning sportsmanship. But do most handshake lines build sportsmanship? If anything, they're probably building the opposite, right? Unless we as parents and coaches say, hey, here's the right way to do this and here's the wrong way to do it. Team, we just lost. You're about to shake the hand of the other team. I want you to look them in the eye. I want you to shake their hand, and I want you to say, good game. You don't necessarily have to mean it, but you need to give them a good handshake, and you need to look them in the eye. You need to do the same thing to the coach, and then I want you to go run over to the referee and tell them thanks for reffing today too. Like, that stuff doesn't just happen. If anything, the opposite happened. Heads are down. They're disrespecting the opponent. They have limp hands. So we need to teach it. We can't just assume it's going to happen on its own.
And Brian, I think we probably even need to think more about this and how we talk about it. Just to be fair, because that's really ultimately what we're saying is character. It's not it's not something that just kind of leaps out and grabs onto us. It has to be pointed out. You need a mentor. Yeah, we need a mentor. That being said, I was in a conversation the other day with three grown men wrestlers, like high level wrestlers. And we were having this very conversation. And by the time I left it, I realized, there are certain sports, there's certain training regimens like wrestling that just inherently brings a certain amount of toughness to the table, whether anybody's verbally teaching it or not. Just the workout itself is going to force you to find out whether you can persist through pain, for example, right? Actually, most sports will do that. But I just thought, there's certainly some inherent things that can stick to us in sports, even without a mentor. But most of the stuff that's going to kind of shape your life comes from someone else. It does. It comes from somebody else teaching it to you.
We're not saying it can't happen. We're just saying it doesn't happen like a vending machine where, hey, I put my kid in youth sports, so I can step away and trust that they're going to build perseverance. They're going to build the resiliency that they need. They're going to learn how to encourage people, all because they're in the sporting environment. Some of that may happen, but if you want to best position your kid to learn that stuff, you got the ticket. It's your job to help them see it and how to do it.
It's good.
Yeah, I think the word automatically, like it doesn't automatically happen, but yes, it's sports provide the opportunity for character growth, but it requires the next level and really walking alongside people to help them do that.
Well, we've been saying all along, let me sneak this in, Bryce, a lot of what's actually being taught is bad character.
Yeah.
It just is.
That's right.
And so all the more we need, because coaches are not necessarily coming to the table with a concern for your spiritual formation these days. It doesn't mean aren't any, but most are not. They're pursuing a different kind of goal. They're pursuing a physical goal. And so somebody somewhere in there, if you want your kid to have Christian character, it's got to be taught.
Yes. Yep.
It's got to be taught.
It's good, man. So another key part of, you mentioned earlier, the winning mentality that of course filters through and it's all about winning. The flip side of that is failure. And we know that if you play sports and if you're involved in youth sports, failure is going to be a part of it. Missed shots and fouls and all those kinds of things. You lose. It's part of it. So from your perspective and kind of your hope for this book to speak differently to the concept of failure and how we as parents can walk alongside of our kids in the midst of failure, what's sort of the key thing you want parents to understand about failure?
Yeah, we would want them to, again, let's talk about how sport culture would define losing and failure in sport. It means you didn't just fail, you are a failure. You have taken on the identity of a failure. And so for Christian parents, when our kids, maybe use the phrase fall short of expectations, they don't play well, they lose, we want to make sure we're modeling a grace-based love to them. We want to say things like, I know you're bummed today. Here's what I know is true. I love you. I really enjoyed watching you play today. And I'm here for you. Like, they need to know that our affections for them and our excitement to and for them is not dependent on their performance. And when they lose, it gives us an incredible opportunity for them to see that embodied at like the best possible level. When they win, of course, they're expecting to hear like, oh, I'm so excited for you today. I loved watching you play. We look different from everybody else when our kids lose, and we can give them a hug and say, I'm so proud of you. I loved watching you play today.
The problem is
your dad.
Yeah, Brian, that's so good. But the problem for too many of us, and again, I'll say this for myself that I've had to work through, is I'm not sure I was proud of him today. I might be a little disgusted with what happened today. I'm disappointed with what happened today. I remember even what we talked about. I'm so enmeshed in this. I feel like a failure because of what you did today. That's why it's so important to actually even like have some Have some Devo moments in the parking lot before you enter the stadium or before the game ends. Literally, to take 30 seconds and just let me get my head right before the Lord before I have this encounter with my kid. Because what ends up happening too often, it's like the prodigal son. What they need is to find the father who saw the bad behavior and still was able to open his arms up wide and say, I just want you. What they expect to find and too often find is the older brother who's got his arms folded and is saying, you don't belong back in this house. You don't deserve to come in here. Think about that. And so if youth sports is actually an experience where our kids are mostly experiencing the older brother, what's that teaching them about the gospel through us? If we're acting like the older brother with them all the time, ooh, that's not the message we want to send to them over and over again.
Well, I love all the biblical comparisons and yeah, the whole book is so Bible based. So I appreciate that perspective on all of these topics. And so, yeah, so the prodigal son there is excellent. Along the lines of failure too, and you guys talked about it in a different context a little bit. Well, I guess it all linked together, but the history of youth sports and the helicopter parenting, and you even used some other phrases I wasn't familiar with, but the snowmobile,
Snowplow.
But the point that I wanted to make in regards to failure is we as parents, we want to protect our kids. We don't want them to fail, right? We don't want them to have to deal with pain or hurt or whatever. And yes, there's a loving part of that. But at the same time, the advantages that sports provide is that we do get hurt, we do get benched, we do miss shots, and yet again, God uses those things to change our character, to transform us. And we learn and grow during all of that. And so what do parents need to hear in regards to stop trying to prevent your kid from, never sitting on the bench? He might actually learn something by sitting on the bench.
It's good. I mean, isn't life really mostly about learning how to process losing?
That's right.
I mean, just let that sink in.
Suffering.
It is. It's about learning how to manage suffering. And when we're always, see, this is what's so ironic. I think about this all the time. I pray for my kids. I got 4 kids, a 24, 22, 19, and a 14-year-old. Okay. So that's kind of where we're at. And I pray that they would have wisdom. I pray that they would follow hard after God. I pray that they would know God's voice in their minds. Okay. And somewhere along the line, I was confronted with this. How do human beings gain wisdom? They gain it from learning how to respond to failure. How do human beings learn how to hear God's voice? They usually have to be broken in some way and be removed from the center of the narrative in order for God to get their attention. Isn't that the whole Bible? Of almost every character in there, they had to be broken in some way. Amen. Which is painful. So if I'm expending all of my energy to try to protect them from ever feeling pain or discomfort, it's almost like I'm working against my own prayers. Just think about that, because I want them to have wisdom. They're going to have to feel pain. I want them to follow God. They're going to have to feel pain. So my prayers have become, as they feel pain, help me to be wise in the way I respond to that and help them find you in the midst of it. Rather than always praying that they don't feel discomfort, as they feel discomfort, may they find you, God, in the midst of it.
Powerful.
Yeah.
Brian, do you have anything to add?
That was wisdom right there. It was good. We have a local coach who has won state championship after state championship, and he told me the other day that each year he's trying to look for losses. Like he's trying to line up his schedule where he knows his team is going to get beat, because there's power in losing that you just don't get if you're constantly winning. And I thought that was something that you don't hear that every day from a high school coach. You hear about we're always going after the win and state championships, but he was like, no, we need to lose because it's going to build something different in us.
So true. We don't like that it's true, but it's true. So the other thing that I found, very important in this book was the reality that young athletes, and especially as they get older, are feeling pressure and they have anxiety. And so before games and what they're facing, and this is a big topic. It's worth exploring in the book for people listening. Make sure you get this so you can dive deeper into it. But when you're in travel sports, the pressure that kids feel because money's on the line. Like, parents are investing money into these kids and they feel that. And so then it translates to anxiety. And so for you guys, over the years, having, understood and continuing to grow in this, coming alongside your kids to understand that, pressure and having a sense of, I forget the term you used, but you want to be a little excited about the game, but not to be, have it debilitate you, the pressure and anxiety. So, Brian, why don't you jump in first on that topic?
Yeah, I mean, the research is saying right now that the more money we spend, the less our kids enjoy sport. And so just like let that sink in. The more money we're putting towards youth sport experience, the less joy they're having in it, because the money and the travel and the gears create this expectation, and our kids know every time they play, it's actually really performing now. There's something on the line that they know there's a lot invested in them, and with that comes pressure and anxiety. And kids just want to play. I'll try to say this really quick. I texted this to Ed last night. I had 5 high school boys at my house last night. Quarterback of the football team, stud baseball player, probably an all-state wrestler, like really good athletes. And they're sitting on top of my garage, the sun's setting. They're here to get their fantasy football team together. And they were, no joke, they were playing Duck, Duck, Goose on top of the roof. Because that's what boys do. They find games and they want to play. You just give them space, give them a roof, put them in a danger situation, and they make a game out of it, and they just want to play and have fun. And it was another reminder to me. I was like almost tearing up of like, that's what they want out of their sporting experience. They just want to play and have fun and laugh and enjoy one another. But we've invested so much into it. We've turned sports into this $40 billion industry, and we strip away the duck, duck, goose on the top of the roof.
That's good, Brian. And Brian, you've talked about this for years too. We professionalized it. So think about it. The attitude that we pay money for a ticket to go to a professional sporting event, and what do we do while we're there? We feel the freedom to scream and yell and say whatever we want at coaches, at players, at referees. People drink and they just become a little bit unhinged. That's what professional sport culture is. And again, we're not saying whether that's good or bad or whatever. That's just what it is. Well, we brought that same kind of unhinged mentality down to our 8-year-old sporting events, minus the alcohol usually, but that same kind of energy. We paid money to be here. We demand that the referees operate in a certain way. We demand that the coach operates in a certain way, or they should be replaced. And we're looking for their replacement in the middle of the season and during the game. We're talking about who else could take their place. We're thinking about leaving the team and going to find a better situation, just like they do at the pro level. And the kids feel that. They feel the anxiety. My kids have told me, even when I'm quiet, I've learned how to be more quiet at games. They feel the anxiety of just everybody else screaming during the game. And it just raises their anxiety level. They're never going to talk about it. Most kids will never be able to articulate what's happening inside of them until they actually get to be college age. And that's where researchers are kind of digging in and trying to get kids to articulate what's happening with themselves. That's what's happening. The anxiety level is going through the roof, and it's mostly because of adults.
And you guys gave some great suggestions on helping with that pressure and some of the spiritual disciplines and just sort of rhythms before games and practice and all that kind of thing as well. So it was helpful. All right, last thing. We only have like a minute left. The reframing of greatness. And, we want our kids to be great. We want them to strive to be great. But what if greatness is different? And so maybe we'll end on that point and again, encourage people to read to find out more. But greatness, what is greatness with a different perspective?
I feel like you have to go to how the Bible would describe greatness. How would Jesus describe greatness? He would probably say the first shall be last and the last shall be first. And so what if in our pursuit of greatness for our kids, we taught them through their youth sport experience what it looks like to serve the least of these? What would it look like if, as our kids are signed up for a league where we're paying $100 or maybe $1,000+? What if they learn through that experience what it looked like to love and engage and show dignity towards the person on the end of the bench, or the kid that just made the biggest mistake and cost their team a loss, and what culture would say the biggest game of the year, but it's really not that big of a deal? That seems like whatever we're paying would probably be worth it. If our kids could walk away from youth sports saying, I learned how to love the least of these, I think that's how the Bible would describe greatness.
It's good, Brian.
And even loving your enemies, which you guys talked about as well. Loving your, the opponent who you're playing against.
Yeah, and we need to think about what that looks like in the context of sports. So we're not just trying to be sloppy with that or naive about it. We have to wrestle with, what does it look like to compete and yet still love? Those are not mutually exclusive ideas. They're not. But they have to be thought of. Yeah, you got to think about it though.
It is. It was eye-opening. It really was to hear you guys talk about it. So, well, guys, I could talk to you all day, but man, appreciate you writing this book. Appreciate you coming on the show today to talk about it. And I encourage everybody to go get their copy. Away Game. You can get it wherever books are sold. It's thick. It's well prepared and researched and thought through, and it's thorough, and you'll be encouraged in so many ways. So I appreciate it, guys. And wish you the best with this book and everything else you've got going on ministry-wise and sports ministry-wise. So thank you, guys. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Bryce.
All right. There's Brian Smith and Ed Uszynski joining us here on the Unpacking It podcast. And, man, this is a must for any parent who's got kids playing. And so, I'm diving into the youth sports. I finally, this is my third season with Maddie playing soccer, and I'm now the head coach. I'm feeling the pressure, and how do I respond to parents that are frustrated with me? I'm already experiencing it. So how do I respond? And how do I, when things aren't going, I've got another team that we got some challenges. We're not the star team. Am I okay with that with 6-year-olds? So yeah, this got me thinking, and I'm thankful for this book. So there you go. I hope you enjoyed the conversation today. And we'll be back next week, Lord willing, as we're getting closer to the NFL season. So a lot going on here at Unpacking It, and thankful to have you a part of the show today. For Ed, for Brian, I'm Bryce. I'm a sports fan who follows Jesus. I believe in the good news that he died on the cross for my sin. He was resurrected, and through faith, I've been saved by his grace. I hope that is true for you as well, and I hope you'll join me as we live life as sports fans who follow Jesus together. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll talk to you next time right here on the Unpacking It podcast.